I've always been really interested in the NC Miata. It's a high revving, naturally aspirated, low weight sports car, and it's very underrated by a lot of the community. They don't typically like it because it's a little bit heavier, it's a little bit larger. However, I think in today's market right now, the NC Miata is probably one of the best budget sports cars that you can buy. We'll be exchanging the daily driver for a couple days. Long-term review on the Mini Cooper. I freaking love this thing, but I want to swap it out for a couple days. My friend Jeff offered to let me drive his NC1 Miata for 48 hours to kind of experience what it's really like to live with. So it's the next day. I finally got back with the car. It ended up raining on my drive back, and then I had to keep working once I got back. Now I can finally enjoy the car for basically a full 2 days. And starting that off, I'm going to a car meet, which I haven't done in a long time. This particular Cars and Coffee had a mobile dyno, which is really cool. And obviously there were several Miatas, one of which was a red NB that was supercharged. It made me miss my old NB a little bit, my little boy. And then John, my buddy, also had his turbo K24, which has basically almost all of the body not wrapped, sorry, it is carbon fiber. I mean, it's not wrapped, it is carbon fiber. So, and later that day, I wanted to take my girlfriend out for some ice cream, and honestly, what better time is there than top down in a Miata on a summer night? It's the best. Oh yeah, oh yeah. So this is a 2006 Mazda Miata. It is the Grand Touring trim, which means that it has a couple nice little bits such as keyless entry, so you can do that. And it actually has a very weird, I guess you can say push to start. It's an interesting way of doing it. It's basically a fake key, but it honestly does work pretty well. And hey, for 2006, that's really early to have that sort of function, so that's actually pretty cool. Overall, this car is pretty stock. It has Miata Cup sway bars, both front and rear. It has Eibach lowering springs, as well as Bilstein shocks. Those are sort of the suspension mods. It also has an ACT clutch. You can sort of tell that it has a clutch because it's a little bit stiffer than stock. It also has a pedal extender kit, which is kind of interesting. It makes it a little bit easier for heel and toe. And I can confirm it's actually very, very easy to heel and toe downshift this car. Arguably one of the most important reasons to get a Miata is because it's a convertible. And the NC is a little bit different compared to the NB and the ND. The top is a little heavier, and I find that you can make fun of me if you want. It's very difficult to try to get the top back up while you're inside the car. You have to sort of like reach back like that, and you know, you can do it for sure. It's just a little bit more tricky than an NA or an NB where the top is a little bit lighter, or an ND where they sort of like ergonomically made it pop up, and then you can kind of just put it over with one arm. And one kind of nice thing is that it actually clicks into place back there. So yeah, it's overall pretty good. It's a Miata, so having convertible is always nice. So I've owned my NB Miata for 4 years. I know it very, very well. Now that I've lived with the NC interior, I actually think it's just basically better in every way. These seats are on the same level as the NB in terms of bolstering, in my opinion. I do love the red in this car. It looks pretty awesome. There is an option for heated seats, And you know, the NBs never got that, so plus to the seats. You also get some storage behind the seats, as well as this sort of center upper console. And you also get a center storage right here. Up here, there's sort of a little pocket to hold, I don't exactly know, but you can put something there. Jeff, my buddy, added a phone mount right there. It's kind of interesting, the handbrake being on the other side. In most Miatas, it's on this side, but I get why they did it. It makes it a little bit less claustrophobic up here for the driver, instead of just kind of putting it more on the passenger, because who cares about them? The steering wheel has actual steering wheel controls, and they're very, very nice. I'd honestly prefer these to my Z. They're very clicky, very easy to use. Cruise control on this side, volume, all the media controls on this side. And overall, the wheel is pretty good. I've definitely always been a fan of Mazda steering wheels, and this is no exception. I think it feels good. It doesn't have much bolstering. It's basically just a solid circle all the way around with zero bolstering kind of up here where you would expect. It still feels good, and it feels like how a Miata should. You've got your oil pressure up top, your fuel on the left, and your coolant temperature in the right. One thing I actually love about this car, as opposed to my Z, for example, it warms up so quick. This car is basically up to temp exiting my neighborhood. That's awesome. It means that you can sort of like, you can take these short drives and you can have fun with it. You can beat on it because it gets up to temp so much quicker. I find that with my Z, I have to drive for like 10 minutes, you know, sometimes even like 12, 13, before it even has any sort of temperature to like do a part throttle pull. So that's actually very underrated. You do also have a mirror with home controls, and it dims. That is massive because this car is very, very small. And basically every single truck or SUV, their headlights will be about here. And that is directly where the mirror is. The HVAC controls are super simple, easy to use. It's an older car. All these old cars are nice and simple that way. The AC actually works incredibly well. And the shifter. The actual knob itself is pretty good. These shifts remind me of my old NB Miata. They're a little bit less notchy. It's a more, I'd say, refined transmission, but you definitely do still feel like it's an older car. It moves around when you're driving it. Sometimes it clicks a little. And I know for the NC2, which is 2009 and above, they ended up kind of strengthening the transmission a little bit because these were having issues for the Miata Cup cars. Pretty large glove box, honestly, not too shabby. There's really not that much to Miata interiors. That's never been what they're, 100% about. It's more about the driving dynamics, how they make you feel. You sit in a very nice seating position. You feel like you're in a sports car. You feel low to the ground. And overall, yeah, I think the interior is an improvement on the older NA and NBs. Compared to the NDs, it's definitely a little, you can tell that this is an older car compared to the NDs, which it is. There's actually a trunk release for the NC. On my old NB, I never had that. Maybe it's an option that I didn't get, but having an actual release is very, very nice. Trunk space obviously is not the largest. It's a pretty small car, but you can fit a decent amount of stuff. You've got a little cubby on the side here. That's nice. Got some straps in the back there. And overall, I've never really found a lot of issues with just carrying most normal things in a Miata. You can carry as many groceries as you want, maybe, unless you have like 10 kids. So this is the era when Mazda and Ford combined together. This engine produces about 170 horsepower. After 2009, it got a big redesign with forged internals. So if you're planning on going forced induction, I would say go 2009 or above. The engine's going to be a lot stronger than these early NB1s. It makes so much of its power just right at the top. So it really just rewards you for kind of like revving it all the way. Not a whole lot of torque down low, but it's not too shabby. One common issue is the coolant expansion tanks. They tend to fall apart with the OEM material. So just upgrading to a Moroso, like this car, is a good preventative maintenance. And yeah, compared to the NA and the NBs, this car feels genuinely pretty quick. So those are just some of my opinions as someone that's owned an NB. Had several family members that owned NAs. I've driven a lot of NDs. Yeah, honestly, I love the NC. I think it's a great car considering the price in today's market. It is a stock exhaust, stock engine, so everything that you hear is going to be pretty quiet. Up top, it does get a little bit loud, but for the most part, it's pretty quiet. The steering is pretty light, I'd say. Lighter than the NA and NB. I believe this is still hydraulic steering for this age. So the feel is pretty good, but the actual weight is a little bit lighter. Clutch is a little heavier with the ACT clutch. You get used to it pretty quick though. Shifts nice and crisp. It's similar to my old NB in terms of, I guess, sort of the gates, but it's a little bit less effort to get into each gear. One thing I will say is that going from 4th to 5th is a little bit odd. You have to really go kind of far over to get in. And I found myself every once in a while I would sort of hit the gate in between 3rd and 5th. But you know, hey, like any car, you get used to it. So how does this car ride? Well, it is an older car, and you do feel a lot of sort of noises when you hit potholes, which is pretty much all the time here in Michigan. So there is a good amount of suspension noise, and overall, you know, it doesn't ride the best, I'd say. In a lot of ways, I actually felt my old NB riding a little bit nicer, but part of that could be within these suspension changes that Jeff has made. That's not to say the actual like quality is bad. The way that it takes bumps is pretty nice. It's stiff, it's firm, but it's not like overbearing. You don't feel like you're just gonna bottom out or anything. It just makes some noise. Interior ergonomics are very nice. I've always found that Miatas have been a pretty comfortable place to sort of like cruise. My elbow sits perfectly here, and you know, it's good. Got one hand on the steering wheel, one hand on the shifter if you want. This is a little bit hard. I think that they solved that in the later years for the NCs. They made it a little bit more padded, but the right arm does kind of sit on some hard plastic. And it loves to rev so much. Heel and toe, very easy. This engine has a really good note to it too. It almost sounds like a miniature supercharged car. It sort of makes this sort of, I guess, higher pitch the higher RPMs you get. And it just sounds really intoxicating. You want to just rev it out everywhere. And this isn't even the good NC engine. After 2009, they got a little bit more power, and yeah, I could only imagine that must feel so good. Because this feels good. There's just something about Miatas. And I maintain, in my opinion, the best sports car ever made is the Mazda Miata. And people sometimes don't understand what I mean by that. There's no other car that is so easy to drive, so affordable, and is so loved by everyone. Like, you go to any track day, there are Miatas, no matter what. There just are. They're everywhere. I would totally buy an NC in the future. Sometimes I do think about my 370Z and wonder if I made the right choice. Because I really do love this car a lot. Miatas are great because you can do stuff like that where you feel like you're driving the car kind of hard and you're not. because realistically you're not doing any sort of crazy speed limit. And it revs so happy. Everything feels light. You feel like you're in a go-kart on the street. And that's kind of the best compliment that I can give to any car, because I want to have fun in this. This isn't a practical car. You don't buy this to just like, you know, haul around kids and groceries and stuff like that. This is a sports car. This is fun. You just want to go out, you want to rip around, and ideally not get thrown into jail. Got the biker gang out and about. All right. AC off. Get that extra 2 horsepower. There's something about a lightweight car that is just, it's so tricky to stuff like that. You're able to turn directions so much easier. All right. You guys know what time it is. Lock it in. Ready to go. Uh-oh. Not ideal. That is an old folks' home, so hopefully everything's okay with them. Let's whip it around. Oh, yes. And it turns in so well. You know, I drove my brother's Porsche Cayman S. It's 987.1, and that had great steering. This is almost as good, and that is a very, very good compliment. You feel like the car is able to just take every steering input so well. Even if if I'm just twitching on a straight road, you can do that. So now that's the power that's different from the NB and NA. You can go part throttle and still accelerate pretty quickly. So would I recommend an NC? I absolutely 100% would. It is a fantastic car. There's a reason why Miatas have won Car and Driver's Car of the Year like 15 times. They're amazing. They're just so good. There's something simple about them. They are reliable. They function very well. They're fun. And, you know, hey, if you can get past the fact that you're not going to be the fastest thing on the street, which, by the way, you never will. There's always going to be someone faster. This is just amazing. And you feel like you're flying on the street, even though I was doing the speed limit there. Like, that's the stuff that makes this such a good street car. You can go out and hoon around, and you're not really going to break any major rules. Yeah. Have a good one, guys.